Let's be honest, there are people out there who seem perfectly normal on the outside, but the moment you spend time with them, you feel drained, uneasy, even questioning your own sanity. It's like standing in the presence of someone wearing a beautiful mask, while underneath, they're quietly feeding off your peace of mind. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and thought, why do I feel so heavy after talking to them? That's not your imagination. That's the effect of toxicity. In today's video, we're going to peel back that mask. I want to walk with you through 7 clear signs of toxic people, the kind of behaviors that don't just annoy you, but slowly erode your spirit, your confidence, and your joy. Some of these signs may surprise you because they don't always come from strangers or obvious enemies. Sometimes they come from people you love, people you trust, even those you've shared your deepest struggles with. Why does this matter? Because if you can't recognize these signs, you end up giving away the most valuable things you have: your peace, your energy, your time. And let me tell you something, time and mental health are the 2 currencies you can never get back. You can always make more money, but you can't recover years wasted in toxic relationships or the therapy bills that follow. Think about it. How many moments of your life have you lost because someone's negativity, manipulation, or control left you replaying conversations in your head, doubting yourself, or apologizing for things that weren't even your fault? Imagine what it would mean to reclaim all of that time, to protect your energy, and to stand strong in your own skin. That's what these 7 signs are about. They're not just warnings, they're tools for freedom. I'll tell you up front, this isn't about paranoia. It's not about looking at everyone around you with suspicion. It's about clarity. When you know the signs, you can stop falling for the same traps. You can stop explaining away behavior that keeps hurting you. You can draw healthy boundaries that give you room to breathe and live with dignity. So here's my invitation to you. Grab your coffee or your tea, or maybe even a notebook, and lean in, because the next few minutes might save you years of unnecessary struggle. I'm going to share these 7 signs in a way that's practical, real, and grounded, not in fear, but in strength. Now, before we dive into the first sign, I want you to do something for me. If you're ready to finally see through the masks, hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, and drop a quick comment that says, "I see the signs." That simple act will not only anchor this lesson in your mind, but it'll let me know you're serious about protecting your peace. All right, let's get started. Sign number 1. Here's the first sign. Toxic people encourage you to stumble, not to rise. Think about it. Real friends, true companions, don't get excited when you fail. They may call you out. They may even tell you hard truths, but it's because they want you to stand tall again. Toxic people, they clap the loudest when you sabotage yourself. And the worst part is, they often do it with a smile. Picture this. You decide to take control of your health. You cut down on sugar. You skip the late-night drinks. You start eating clean. You feel good about it. And then comes that friend who laughs, "Come on, live a little. You're no fun anymore." Suddenly, they're the first one pushing cake into your hands at the party, or sliding another drink across the table even after you said, "I'm good." It seems harmless, even playful. But what's really happening? They're mocking your discipline, planting seeds of doubt, making you feel silly for wanting better. I've seen this up close. Years ago, when I was fighting to stay sober, I had a friend, we'll call him Robert. He was funny, charming, the kind of guy everyone wanted around. And when I said no to a drink, he'd smile and say, "You've earned it." At first, I told myself he was just being friendly. But one night, after falling off track, it hit me. My sobriety forced him to face his own demons. And as long as I was drinking too, he didn't have to. That's the psychology behind this. Misery loves company, but it loves compliant company most. Some people don't just tolerate your weakness. They need it. Your discipline threatens them, because it reminds them of what they're not willing to change. So instead of rising with you, they pull you back down. all while disguising it as fun, as support, as friendship. Now, I'm not saying these people wake up plotting your downfall. Many of them are just lost themselves. But that doesn't make them safe. In fact, it makes them more dangerous, because you've probably already let your guard down around them. They're siblings, co-workers, even lifelong friends. They know exactly which buttons to press. So what's the Stoic response? Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." The first fortress you must guard is your own mind. That means setting boundaries not with anger, not with drama, but with clarity. You decide which conversations you'll have, which invitations you'll decline, which just one drink you'll refuse. And if you have to, you step back altogether. Because here's the truth. Protecting your discipline is not selfish, it's survival. Every time you say no to toxic encouragement, you're saying yes to your peace, your health, your freedom. So, let me ask you this. Who in your life seems the happiest when you compromise your values? Who claps when you fall, but stays silent when you rise? Recognizing them is step one. And in a moment, we'll talk about the second sign, how manipulators don't just dismiss your goals, but also dismiss your feelings. Stay with me, because this one runs deeper than most people realize. Here's the second sign. Toxic people make you doubt your own feelings and twist them to gain control. Now, this one is sneaky. It doesn't show up as yelling, insults, or obvious cruelty. No, this one dresses up as care, as loyalty, even as love. And that's why it's so dangerous. Because while you're thinking, they're just trying to help, they're actually pulling the strings. Have you ever opened up to someone about how hurt you felt, only to hear, "You're too sensitive"? At first you brush it off, but the more they say it, the more you start to believe it. Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I'm imagining things. That's not you being weak, that's you being manipulated. It's called gaslighting, and it's designed to make you question your reality. And it doesn't stop there. These people will take it a step further. They'll say things like, "I'm only protecting you," while slowly controlling who you see, where you go, how you spend your time. They don't storm in with threats. No, they whisper, patiently, softly, "Trust me, I know what's best for you." And before you know it, your world shrinks. You stop calling certain friends because it causes drama. You skip family events to avoid conflict. And little by little, the only voice left in your life is theirs. I've seen this play out with people twice my age, wise in so many ways, yet reduced to walking on eggshells in their own homes. And the saddest part, they didn't even notice when it started. Because it doesn't feel like control, it feels like care. That's what makes it so devastating. So why do manipulators do this? It's not about love, it's about power. They don't want your affection freely given. They want your devotion chained and secured. They twist reality until you no longer trust your own judgment. And when you finally try to stand up for yourself, they hit you with guilt. "I'm only trying to help you. No one else understands you like I do." Sound familiar? This is where Stoic wisdom gives us clarity. Epictetus said, "We are disturbed not by things, but by the views we take of them." The manipulator's entire game is to hijack your views, to make you see the world only through their lens. But you are not powerless. The antidote is awareness, seeing their tactics for what they are, and refusing to hand over your reason. And yes, I know it's hard when the manipulator is someone you love deeply. It could be a partner, a family member, even a lifelong friend. But here's the truth. Love without respect isn't love, it's control. Protecting your peace isn't cruelty, it's self-preservation. So if you've ever found yourself doubting your own instincts because someone keeps telling you you're wrong, I want you to pause and ask, am I really overreacting, or am I being gaslit into silence? Because once you see the pattern, you can begin to break free. And in the next sign, we're going even deeper. We'll talk about how some toxic people don't just manipulate your emotions, They actually sow division between you and the people you love most. This one is subtle, and it can tear families and friendships apart if you don't recognize it. So stick around, because what you're about to hear might explain years of unnecessary conflict in your life. Now let's move to the third sign. Toxic people sow division and create conflict. Here's the thing. Sometimes the people who cause the most damage in our lives aren't the ones who shout at us or openly betray us. They're the ones who lean in close, whisper softly, and pretend to be our biggest supporter. They wear the mask of a confidant, but in reality, every piece of information you share with them becomes ammunition. Think about it. Have you ever had a friend who seemed like the perfect listener? Someone who encouraged you to spill your secrets, who made you feel like you could finally take off your armor? But then, little by little, things in your relationship started to shift. Doubts crept in, tension grew, and somehow, drama followed wherever this person went. That's not coincidence, that's strategy. These people thrive on positioning themselves as the middleman. They'll say, "I'm just trying to help," or "Don't take it the wrong way, but I think she doesn't really value you." On the surface, it sounds like concern, but underneath it's division. They want you second-guessing your friendships, your marriage, even your family ties, because the more you doubt others, the more you depend on them. I've seen this happen up close. A couple I once knew were happily married for years, but after a certain friend got involved, small misunderstandings became full-blown fights. Every time the husband tried to reconcile, this so-called friend would quietly suggest that maybe his wife had hidden motives. And when the wife sought advice, that same friend hinted that her husband wasn't being honest. The marriage didn't fall apart because of one big betrayal. It unraveled because of 1,000 tiny seeds of doubt planted by someone who pretended to care. Why do they do this? Because chaos keeps them in control. If you're fighting with others, they become the fixer, the one you turn to for clarity. They get to be the gatekeeper of your relationships, the filter through which you see the people you love. And as long as you're dependent on them, they'll always be at the center of your world. But here's the truth. This isn't friendship. It's manipulation disguised as loyalty. And the cost? Broken families, shattered trust, and years of unnecessary conflict. So how do we stop it? The Stoics give us a clear answer. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that our perceptions must stay disciplined, that we should not let the opinions of others cloud our judgment. Ask yourself, does this person bring clarity or confusion into my life? Do they help resolve conflict, or do they seem to thrive on it? If the answer is confusion and drama, you already know what you need to do. The solution isn't to fight them at their own game. That only drags you deeper into their web. Instead, practice direct and honest communication with the people you love. Limit what you share with the divider, and if necessary, create distance. Not because you hate them, but because you love peace more. Because the moment you stop letting someone triangulate your relationships, you take back control, and you protect the bonds that truly matter. Now, let's move to the fourth sign, one that hits even closer to home. These people don't just divide, they drain. I call them emotional vampires, and once you see how they operate, you'll understand why you always feel exhausted after being around them. Now let's talk about the fourth sign, and this one might hit closer to home than you expect. I call them emotional vampires. Have you ever met someone who, at first, seemed like the answer to your prayers? They show up at just the right time, offering a listening ear, a helping hand, maybe even showering you with kindness you didn't realize you were craving. They seem like a blessing, but slowly, you begin to notice something different. Every conversation with them feels heavier. Every time you leave their presence, you feel, that's their design. Emotional vampires don't suck blood. They drain your energy, your joy, your sense of self. And the way they do it is almost invisible. They'll ask questions, not to understand you, but to catalog your weaknesses. They'll comfort you, not to help you heal, but to store your pain as leverage. And little by little, what started as support begins to feel like interrogation. I remember an elderly friend who went through this. After losing her husband, she met a kind man at church. He carried her groceries, checked in on her, made her feel cared for in ways she hadn't felt for years. She thought she was blessed to have him, but slowly, her world began to shrink. She stopped going to family dinners. She stopped calling her children. And whenever her loved ones questioned his intentions, she defended him fiercely. He's the only one who really understands me. The truth was darker. He had convinced her that her family didn't care, that they were selfish, that only he truly valued her. What looked like love was really isolation. And once she was isolated, he had complete control. That's how emotional vampires work. They don't announce themselves as villains. They appear gentle, attentive, indispensable. They become the first person you call with good news, the first one you turn to when you're in pain. But with every secret you share, they gain more power. Their goal isn't to support you, it's to own you. And here's the tragedy. You start apologizing for things you never did, bending your values to keep them happy, accepting blame just to keep the peace. You give and give. They want submission. The Stoics warned us about this. Marcus Aurelius said, "Our mind is dyed by the color of our thoughts." When you allow an emotional vampire to flood your life with doubt and self-loathing, they don't just change your mood, they reshape your identity. You begin to believe you are weaker, smaller, less worthy than you truly are. So what's the solution? Brutal honesty. You have to be willing to see the relationship for what it really is, not what you wish it could be. Ask yourself, do I feel stronger or weaker around this person? Do I feel free or do I feel drained? If the answer is drained, it's time to step back, not out of cruelty, but out of mercy for yourself. It's about reclaiming the person you were before they dimmed your light. So let me ask you, who in your life leaves you feeling exhausted every time you interact with them? Who do you walk away from feeling smaller instead of stronger? If someone came to mind, that might be your emotional vampire. And recognizing them is the first step toward freedom. Now, in the next part, we'll look at another type of toxic presence, people who don't just drain your energy, but who spread fear and negativity until your world feels smaller than it really island. Stay tuned, because this one might explain why you've been holding yourself back without even realizing it. Now, here's the fifth sign. Toxic people spread fear and negativity until your world feels smaller than it really island. Have you ever noticed how some people always seem to carry a cloud of doom around them? No matter what the situation is, they find the worst-case scenario. Share a dream with them, and instead of encouragement, you get a list of reasons why it'll never work. Tell them about an opportunity, and they'll remind you of every possible risk. Before long, you start hesitating, second-guessing, and eventually, you stop trying at all. That's not realism, that's poison. Psychologists call this fear contagion. Just like laughter can spread in a room, so can anxiety. You don't have to be naturally fearful to start feeling anxious. Spend enough time with someone who thrives on dread, and it will rub off on you. What makes this especially dangerous is how subtle it island. You rarely notice the exact moment you stop being bold. One day you're dreaming about your goals, and the next you're apologizing for even wanting them. I've seen this happen to strong, capable people. A friend once told me how he had a business idea he was passionate about, but every time he shared it with his brother, he heard, "The market's too risky. You'll lose everything. Don't be stupid." After a while, he abandoned the idea altogether, not because he lost faith in it, but because someone else's fear became his own. That's the power of toxic negativity. These people don't just highlight risks. They create a reality where you feel incapable without their counsel. They convince you the world is dangerous, that you can't trust your instincts, that you need their warnings to survive. But the truth, they're not protecting you. They're controlling you. The Stoics warned us about this centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote that our mind becomes dyed by the color of the thoughts we allow in. If you surround yourself with constant fear and pessimism, it doesn't stay outside, it stains you. And once you let it soak in, you begin to see the world through their lens. Small, threatening, hopeless. But here's the good news. You don't have to accept that die. You get to choose the thoughts and voices that shape your reality. Ask yourself, does this person help me see the world clearly, or do they always leave me feeling smaller, weaker, more afraid? Do they speak truth to strengthen me or fear to control me? The answers may be painful, but they're liberating. And the solution isn't to harden your heart or shut everyone out. It's to build boundaries around your mind. Learn to separate caution from paralysis, honesty from cruelty, realism from toxic pessimism. You don't need voices that shrink your world. You need voices that expand it. So, let me ask you, who in your life makes you feel like the world is nothing but risk and danger? Who makes you doubt dreams you once believed in? Recognizing them is the first step toward reclaiming your courage. Because you weren't meant to live small. You were meant to live free, guided not by fear, but by wisdom. Now, in the next part, we'll take this even further. We'll look at another toxic tactic, one that hits at the very core of your kindness. It's when people use your compassion, your generosity, and even your guilt against you. And once you see this one, you'll never look at certain requests for help the same way again. Now we come to the sixth sign. Toxic people exploit your kindness and use guilt as their weapon. Here's the truth. Your compassion, your empathy, your willingness to help, these are some of the most beautiful qualities you carry. But in the wrong hands, they become tools for manipulation. And the people who use them against you rarely scream or demand. They just sigh, look disappointed, or drop a carefully chosen phrase like, "If you really cared, you'd do this for me." Sound familiar? That's not a request, that's emotional blackmail. You see, healthy relationships thrive on reciprocity. You give, you receive, and the balance creates trust. But with manipulators, the scale is always tipped. You give once, and it becomes an expectation. You say yes twice, and suddenly you're trapped in an endless cycle of obligation. The moment you dare to say no, they paint you as selfish, ungrateful, or uncaring. I've seen this with a friend who was constantly volunteered by her sibling, babysitting, lending money, running errands. At first, she thought she was just being supportive. But over time, it wasn't a favor anymore. It was a duty. And every time she tried to set a boundary, her sibling would sigh and say, "Wow." Because guilt is heavy, it makes good people bend until they break. Why do toxic people use guilt? Because it works. Guilt attacks the very core of your identity. You want to be loving, dependable, kind. They know that, so they twist those values against you. And suddenly, saying no doesn't feel like protecting yourself. It feels like betraying who you are. But here's where Stoicism speaks loud and clear. The Stoics taught us that virtue lies in reasoned choice, not in blind obligation. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, just because someone asks doesn't mean it's right. Real kindness isn't about draining yourself empty. It's about giving freely, not out of fear, but out of strength. So how do you deal with this kind of manipulation? You start by redefining what kindness actually means. Being kind does not mean being endlessly available. Being generous does not mean being exploited. And saying no does not make you cruel, it makes you human. Practical step: the next time someone tries to guilt you into something, pause and ask yourself, if I say yes, am I doing this from love or from fear of how they'll react if I don't? That question alone can save you years of resentment. And let me be clear, you don't need to defend every boundary with a courtroom speech. A simple, calm, "I can't this time," is enough. The ones who don't, that tells you everything you need to know. So, think about it. Who in your life constantly frames your no as a betrayal? Who makes you feel like love must be proven with endless sacrifice? That's not love, that's control. And the moment you stop feeding that cycle of guilt, you reclaim the purest version of your kindness, the version that heals instead of hurts. Now, in the next sign, we'll talk about one of the most insidious forms of manipulation, people who don't just guilt you, but actually rewrite reality itself. They'll twist the truth until you start questioning your own memory. And once you see this tactic, you'll understand why some relationships feel like a constant fog you can never escape. Now let's move to the seventh and final sign. Toxic people twist the truth and rewrite reality until you no longer trust your own mind. This one is perhaps the most disorienting of all because it doesn't just attack your feelings, it attacks your memory, your very grip on reality. It's a tactic often called gaslighting, but taken to its highest level. And if you've ever experienced it, you know how dizzying it feels. Imagine this. You remember a conversation clearly. You recall the words, the tone, even the way it made you feel. But when you bring it up, the other person looks at you calmly and says, "That never happened. You must be imagining things." At first, you brush it off. But when it keeps happening, you begin to question yourself. Did I remember it wrong? Am I being too sensitive? Maybe I'm losing it. That's not forgetfulness on your part, that's deliberate manipulation. These people don't just want to win arguments. They want to own the narrative. If they can rewrite your past, they can control your present and shape your future. I once spoke with someone who lived years in a relationship like this. Every disagreement turned into a battle of memory. If she said, "You promised me this," he would respond, "I never said that. You're making things up again." Over time, she stopped trusting her own recollection. She stopped speaking up at all, because it always ended the same way, with her apologizing for things she never did. Why do toxic people twist reality like this? Because if they can get you to question yourself, they never have to take responsibility. If you doubt your memory, they never have to change. They become the sole editor of the truth, and you become a character in their story instead of the author of your own. But here's where Stoicism lights the way. Epictetus taught, "If a man is mistaken, instruct him kindly and show him the truth. But if he is unwilling to see it, remember reason and truth were given to you, not to him." In other words, your clarity is your fortress. You don't have to win their game, you just have to stop playing it. So how do you protect yourself? Start by documenting reality. Write things down. Save messages. Keep your own record. That's not paranoia, it's self-defense. And more importantly, rebuild trust with your own mind. When someone tells you, "That never happened," pause and remind yourself, "No, I know what I experienced. I know what I saw." Your lived truth is valid, no matter how many times they try to erase it. Here's a question worth asking. Who in your life makes you feel like you can't even trust your own memory? Who constantly shifts the story until you're left confused and apologizing? Those are not people protecting you, they're people controlling you. And the only way forward is clarity. Limit what you share. Refuse to let them define reality for you. And if necessary, walk away not in bitterness, but in strength. Because protecting your mind isn't selfish, it's essential. Now, we've covered 7 unmistakable signs of toxic people. And I want you to remember this. Recognizing them doesn't mean living in paranoia. It means living in freedom. Because once you see the game, you don't have to play it anymore. So let me ask you, which of these 7 signs hit home for you the most? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. And if this resonated with you, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this with someone who might need a wake-up call. Because at the end of the day, you weren't born to be someone's puppet. You were born to live free, with peace, clarity, and dignity. And that begins by guarding your mind from those who would twist it. So, let's step back and put this all together. We've walked through 7 unmistakable signs of toxic people. And if you've stayed with me this far, you already know these aren't just small annoyances. They're patterns that quietly drain your soul, break your confidence, and steal years of your life if you let them. Let's recap quickly. They encourage you to stumble instead of rise. They dismiss your feelings and manipulate you through deception. They sow division and plant seeds of doubt between you and others. They act as emotional vampires, draining your energy and isolating you. They spread fear and negativity until your world feels smaller than it really island. They exploit your kindness and use guilt to control you. They twist the truth, rewrite reality, and make you question your own mind. That's the battlefield. And here's the good news. Now that you can see it, you don't have to keep fighting blind. Because here's the truth, once you recognize these tactics, you no longer have to live under their spell. You get to choose. You get to decide who sits at your table, who speaks into your life, and who no longer deserves that seat of influence. And let me tell you, that choice is not selfish. That choice is survival. Think about it. How much lighter would your life feel if you stopped apologizing for boundaries? How much time would you reclaim if you stopped replaying conversations with people who only twist your words? How much stronger would you be if you refused to let guilt, fear, and manipulation guide your decisions? This is where Stoic philosophy meets real life. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And Marcus Aurelius reminded us that our minds are dyed by the thoughts we allow in. The Stoics weren't just writing for dusty old books, they were writing for us, for this exact struggle. Their wisdom is clear. If you want peace, you must guard your mind. If you want freedom, you must master your choices. And yes, it's not easy. Sometimes the toxic person is a family member. Sometimes it's an old friend you've known for decades. Sometimes it's someone you love deeply. That's what makes it so hard. But remember, this loving someone does not mean letting them lead you into darkness. Protecting your peace isn't turning your back on love. It's protecting the very foundation that makes love possible. So here's my challenge to you. Look back at the 7 signs we covered. Which one hit closest to home? Which one made you think of someone in your life? Don't ignore that feeling. Comment below and share it. I guarantee you're not the only one. And when you speak it out, you start breaking its power. If this video gave you clarity, if it helped you see through the mask even a little bit, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who needs it. Let's build a community that doesn't just complain about toxic people, but actually learns how to rise above them. Because here's the bottom line. You weren't born to be someone's victim, puppet, or scapegoat. You were born to live with strength, dignity, and peace. And once you see the game toxic people play, you never have to play it again. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and remember, protecting your mind is not just self-preservation. It's the highest form of self-respect. I'll see you in the next video.